All right, good afternoon. We're coming back after attempting to have things run for the weekend. Transitioned over to using for lib. Unfortunately, what ended up happening was a number of them had basically ended up crashing out here. No real explanation on what happened. It looks like the WANDB had timed out at some point, and then it wasn't able to complete that call out for that. And so I think that ended up causing some of the issues here. It had run for in some of these like 25 million steps before it crashed out, and then was left running. I think this was the one. Yeah, this is the one from last night. There was an issue here. When I had started it, it was at like 600 or 700 steps per second, which is significantly faster than what I was getting from stable baselines. Stable baselines would get about 1 to 200 per second steps. This is a significant increase, but with it regularly crashing out, there were basically no results for what we can save, because it doesn't save the process for it, because it doesn't complete the training. So I let it run basically Friday evening, Saturday evening. Here's the Saturday evening run. Similarly, about 13 hours into the run, it stopped what it was doing. And then this was Friday evening. It had made the most progress overall, one of the slower ones, just because I had it streaming during that time. And then it eventually had crashed out in the morning. The uptime that you see here is not the total time, or is the total time that it was running, but not necessarily actively going through those steps. So I can pull these over here. These were like the logs that WANDB had pulled for them. So we were having really good performance on the Saturday and Sunday ones that were not going concurrent with the stream. And then all of a sudden at around the 300 epoch mark would be all of a sudden where performance would start nosediving, and then eventually it crashing out. Ironically enough, the Sunday one had run the most the Friday one had run the most iterations while it was streaming, but it did eventually crash out at some point in the early AM hours here on the East Coast. What we did see here was that it had made it through, these are some of the events later in the game, but you can see most of them had made it to Brock, but really by like the 200 epoch mark. It had like all the agents beat it on the third iteration. And so you're talking, this saves every about 2,000 steps for these. So with multiple instances running, basically all of them had done it. You can see the first iteration took longer for it to figure out. And then eventually towards the end, it had actually had one that, or not one, but a couple that had made it and beat Misty. Whereas the later versions were starting to get there much more consistently and quickly. The second one was actually the best in terms of making progress there. Unfortunately, we did not make it further than that in terms of the gym leader battles within the game. So I'll take that back over here. I'm working to try and better understand what exactly it was. It would just sit there and hang. We wouldn't show on the map. So if I show us here, you'll see right now there's a bunch of iterations running, but if you look for us, we weren't actually showing on the map. But if you look very carefully, you can see we are actually here. This is the stable baselines version that had been running most of the morning since this had crashed out. The progress there is it's almost completing its first run through. Once we hit about 200 updates here, that will be the case. None of them have actually made it to Brock. Most of them have figured out that leveling your Pokemon is a good thing to do, and then we tapered off some of the rewards. Getting healing rewards for going back to the player's house and talking to his mom causes it to heal the Pokemon, and then it would go back out for a short while, do some more leveling, and then come back here. So making decent progress. There's a fair amount of faints too, so I'm wondering if some of the heal score is because instead of actually healing the Pokemon, it's getting reward for fainting, which kind of resets the progress for where you're at in the game, but not, but you're still getting rewarded for it. So I do need to check on that calculation, and that's some of what we'll be doing here today. I did have a couple sets of notes for myself. I think I'll increase the badge reward as well. This iteration had not figured out to even get the badges yet, but I think just because the scores are already so high for some of the other things here, that need to increase the reward compared to some of its other options. That way it gets a swell of points at that and then knows to rush that like on the next iteration. So for that, come here. When we had changed this, we originally had it at 5. We upped it to 20, and then we took it back down to 5. I'm going to just double that 5 to 10. The reward score here is last time we'd taken that down from 4 to 3 and then 3 to 2. I'm thinking about taking this back up just to incentivize it to figure out the major events of the game and start moving along the road more, because what we're seeing here is it's learning to train really at all. So we'll see here. That looks like it dropped off the map for the next training session, but everyone is here still in Pallet Town. It hasn't even made it over to Viridian City and started to make progress that way. So I think taking up those two sets of rewards will incentivize it for moving along. So we're going to just change this from 2 to 4. I had also removed the opponent level from the score, was the idea here. This kind of happens naturally through the game. You get the event reward for facing the rival, and then you get like levels for the battle itself. So I think this just has too much overlap with other things, and it's not really adding much. It doesn't change that frequently through the game as well. So I don't think I don't think having this here as a reward is actually adding much to the performance of the model. So I think I'm taking that out. Another thought here was to adjust the score for Pokemon Scene. We had doubled that just to hopefully encourage it to get out there and see Pokemon. I think it's just going to be taking that down to, you get a point for each unique Pokemon that you see. You get 3 times the reward for capturing one. So hopefully you see it again and capture it. And then that should encourage it to continue making progress through the game. What I'm seeing here too is that the Explorer score may need to go up a little bit, because we're removing some of the other scoring factors in the earlier parts of the game. But I want to save that for if this one doesn't progress as well the next time, with the increased event rewards, and then removing some of these other factors out, that we can hopefully see more progress there. You're seeing here quickly on a couple of these that it does go into the double digits. So one has already captured 4 unique Pokemon, but I had seen the Pallet Town area. So another idea was also, because it spends quite a bit of time, how many steps do we have here? We're about halfway through. I'll pull this over. About half the time, it's spending time really talking through menus. You can see this one here has a Pidgeotto, which is great. Just that we want them to have a few stronger Pokemon before it makes a bunch of progress in the game, because ideally we want it to be able to quickly move through Mount Moon once it figures that process out. But right now it seems that it's gotten the most reward from leveling the Pokemon, especially compared to its exploration. That's why it's focusing on that. And then as far as the level reward goes, we do the tapering off here. There are 3 groupings for that. As soon as I can find it here in the code. So the three groupings are, it's just straight linear level for level up until combined group of 36. We're taking 6 off for the starter Pokemon. And then from 30 to 50, you get half a point per level after that. And then after level 50, you get 1/4 of a point per level. The idea here is to taper off the rewards for leveling so that it doesn't spend so much time leveling in the early phases. And then also with increasing the badge and event rewards, it should encourage it to be moving through the map pretty quickly. So those are the changes I would like to incorporate. Another thing here was to set a very small point reward for going through the menus in terms of the actions that it would take. So that way it's learning that moving is worth more points than just kind of fumbling with the menus, because it seems what happens is once it gets stuck on its progress in the mountain area, it prefers to then spend time in the menu because you're not getting points for exploring at that point. You're not really getting much points in terms of leveling. That I think having it as a very, very small overall reward should teach it in the early phases that there's very little that you can actually do in the menu, and then encourage it to keep going with the exploring, or keep going with the leveling, so that way you can kind of find your way through. Hopefully what it hadn't learned is that there are, it had explored all the coordinates, so then we eventually cap out, and that's part of the reason why I had changed the level structure last time. And it seems like, I know it's very early on in this training session, that we are getting the better rewards overall. It seems like we had just finished another training session, so just taking a look here. You can see a bunch of them are still hanging around. A few of them have moved out of it. I think a fair amount of these are because it's fainting and getting sent back to Pallet Town, but I wanted to stop spending time going through the statuses and everything for the Pokemon and spend more of the time going towards the steps. So by setting a very, very small score for those, you can then discourage that behavior by saying there are better things for it to do rather than it going. Theoretically, you could even set a small negative reward, but we had seen for the death score here, with it being negative, basically what it would do is it would eventually stop trying to even do exploration because it wasn't achieving a score, and it wasn't getting points for fainting as well, or with getting negative points for when it would faint, and that would cause it to basically stop and hang out at the Pokemon Center, or re-explore areas of the map where it knew it could no longer encounter Pokemon. So to do that, there's a few things that we can do here. So I want to say, I want to change this to M. So level rewards, badges, item rewards. Yeah, I should put it in here before we get to the all rewards. So let's go to, check in menu. Self, and then read M. Get this out of the list. 057. Here, no, that's problems. So running once.